Welcome and karibuni to Aroma of Zanzibar. Today we're going to be making this beautiful crunchy Swahili style sambusa. So I'm using about 2.5 pounds of ground beef, which is also known as Keema, and this is regular, yeah? Or you can use lean. And at this point I'm just going to brown my meat, so I'm not adding any water or any seasoning. So I'm going to start by making my fresh ginger and garlic paste. So I've used about 12 cloves of fresh garlic that I have sliced, as well as 2 thumb size of fresh ginger that I have sliced, and I've added about 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. Now for my onions, I'm using 1.25 pound of red onions, and as my meat is simmering on medium heat, I've added about 2 tablespoons of fresh ginger and garlic paste, and we're just going to mix it well. Now for my seasoning, I like to keep it very simple, so I'm using about 2.5 tablespoons of cumin powder and 1.5 tablespoons of freshly ground black pepper that's coarse. Now you can add more, or you can reduce, or also you can use whatever type of seasoning that you like. All right, so we're just going to mix this well. And I also like to use a little bit of cinnamon, so I added about 1 tablespoon of cinnamon powder, which is totally optional. And we're going to mix this well and also add some salt to taste. And we're going to let it simmer and make sure until all the liquid is completely dried out. So now the rest of my ingredients that I have chopped the onions, as you can see them, and I've used a large bunch of cilantro, a big one, or you can use 2 small ones. And I also used green chilies. You can use red or whatever color. So now after my meat has slightly cooled, I went ahead and added my chopped onions and my green chilies and my cilantro. Now if the onions are a bit too much, you can reduce, but for me, I prefer to use half quantity of the meat. So since I've used 2.5 pounds of meat, I use 1.25 pound of onions. So we're just going to mix it well and then leave it aside as we move to the next step of our recipe. So now I'm ready to make my dough. I've got 1/2 cup of water and I added a little salt to it. I'm just going to mix it well. And I'm using 1 cup of all-purpose flour. And the water is not warm or anything, it's just room temperature. And we add about 1/4 teaspoon of oil, vegetable oil, just a little bit. We're just going to mix that well, just make a nice crumb, not just a fine crumb. And then we're going to start adding the water. Now the consistency of this dough is very, very crucial. You want it to be medium consistency. You don't want it to be too light or too dense. So for 1 cup of flour, I used 1/4 cup of water. Now I have done this video before about 3 years ago, and I just felt that it needed an upgrade in every aspect. You know, it was 19 minutes and it was too dull and too boring. So I just decided to redo it. So you want to knead your dough for at least 10 minutes. You want to develop those glutens because that's what's going to help the dough to stretch when we are rolling it into a pastry. All right, you're going to make it nice, thin, fine pastry. Okay, so you want it to stretch like that. All right, so we're going to put it here, and I just added 1 drop of oil just so that my dough does not stick, and let it rest for about 15 to 20 minutes. So after such time, now we are ready to start rolling the pastries. And I like to divide this into 3, but you can do 2 if you have a large surface to roll this on, or you can do 4 if you find it manageable, but I find 3 is well to manage, easy to manage. All right, so, and you want your dough, your discs to be same size too. And I'm using rice flour to roll the dough. This rice flour is very, very fine. It's almost like, it's like a starch. You can get this in the Asian market. All right, so I've put some at the bottom and on the top, and we're just going to roll this. There's no specific size for this, but I usually go for 8-inch round, as you can see. And we're using a lot of rice flour for this because that's what's going to help the dough roll very thin, and of course with the help of gluten that I talked about. And that's about it. So the first one is done. I'm doing the second one. And you want to roll them same size and shape if you can, because it's going to be easy to manage. And yeah, just like that. Add more flour, rice flour, and then we're going to put that right on top of it. And we will be moving to the third one. For the third one too, you're going to roll it the same way. And then we're going to place all the dough, all the pastries, all the discs, whatever you want to call them, all three of them, and we're going to roll them together. Okay, now this technique is different from the other one because we are not going to pre-cook this. I will share with you that one in my next video where I'm doing the chicken samosas. And yeah, so you can roll this as thin or as large as you want, however you can manage, but please make sure in between you want to open these and see how you're moving. You see, like this one, the bottom one wasn't moving at all, and you'll need to keep adding the rice flour as and when you need, otherwise your pastries will be, stuck to each other. You see, like here, we needed more. Yeah, I love thin pastries because that's what's going to make your sambusa very, very crunchy. Now, Swahili, we call it sambusa. And of course, in India, they call them samosas. And of course, English people have adapted that name as samosa. So now I'm ready to cut my strips. The sambusas are usually 2 to 2.5. Some people go to 3 if you want them bigger inches. And with this dough, 1 cup of flour, you can go up to 12 to 15 sambusas, depending on how thick your pastries are, or thin for that matter. Okay, so, and you want to keep them in a cloth, wrap them nicely in a kitchen towel or wrap them up in a saran paper because they do tend to dry very fast. Okay, and you can actually freeze these, once you're done, and wrap them up nicely. So now this is enough if you want to work with it as it is, but I like to make them much thinner than this one and longer. So the more you roll, the more they're going to become thinner and longer. So for one sambusa, you can use just 1 strip, or if you want, you can use the glue and attach and use 2 strips or 1.5. However you like, it depends how thick you want your sambusa to be and how you want your layers to be. All right, so we're just going to roll it again. As you can see, this is how we like our Zanzibari sambusa. I don't do this often unless I have a special guest or I'm really, really craving, but most of the time I use these store-bought pastries. All right, so this is how it is. You see, it's nice and thin and it's long enough. So I'm going to continue with the rest, and then we'll be ready to fill the sambusas and roll them. So for my glue, I'm using all-purpose flour. I've got, I think, about 2 tablespoons, and I just added some water. You just want some nice thick consistency. There's no specific measurement. Okay, I think that's fine. And we're ready. So now I'm ready to start. Okay, just remove all the extra starch. Oops, there's a drop of water there. All right. So the amount of filling that goes in there, if it's chicken or meat, it depends how you like it. I used about 1.5 tablespoons. And you're going to start from the end like that. Try and create a triangle shape. It might be a little bit difficult in the beginning, but once you get the hang of it, it's fine. It doesn't have to start with a perfect triangle. And then that's how it goes. Very simple. I would have loved to show you 2 of these, but my video is already long. I don't want to make a very long video. So you see, and if you want to add more pastry, just put the glue over there. Instead of folding, you can continue and maybe add extra pastry. I like to do 10 folds. That's fine. So that's it. There goes my sambusa. Now we're ready to fry. Now for frying sambusa, we always use room temperature oil. You can freeze the sambusas, but even after they're frozen, when you cook them in room temperature oil. So you put them like that and let the grease start heating on its own. As you can see, it's just catching up. And over here, it's really now bubbling. So this might take about 10 to 15 minutes. And once you're done with the first batch, turn off your heat and then let the grease cool down before you do the second batch. And you're going to cook them, fry them like that until you get your desired color. Okay, mine is just perfect. And we are ready to serve the sambusa. They look a little bit white. It's because of the light. And as you can see, my sambusas are ready. Now this is the one that has been fried in room temperature oil, and this is the one that has been fried in a hot oil. And the best part of the sambusa is, I've got my chutney ready, is when you can remove the pastry like that, and also when you get that crunch as you cut it or bite into it. So thank you so much. For more recipes, please visit me at Aroma of Zanzibar. You'll find all the measurements and ingredients in the description box below and this very last page.